It was a curious sight. A cinema full of ladies and girls dressed in pink, with just one middle-aged man wearing a suit. I felt like an alien when I ventured into the global Barbie hype. To be honest, I only went to see it because I'd heard that this blockbuster not only wants to entertain, but also raises substantive themes. And indeed, among all the pink and glitter, there's a surprising number of issues to think about. Evidently, feminism is at the forefront. The opening scene sets the tone. Director Greta Gerwich starts her movie with a shot-for-shot homage to the opening scene of Stanley Kubrick's cult film 2001: A Space Odyssey. She thus makes a connection between the evolution from ape to man in Kubrick's film and the emancipation of women thanks to Barbie. The majestic music by Richard Strauss makes it clear that both are gigantic developments. Barbie depicts how a woman in society can take on all the roles that used to be reserved for men. In this sense, the film poses a pertinent question to the Church, because that's exactly where this kind of equality is not a reality yet. Especially in the West, many Catholics are voicing their opinion that it's high time that we too take this step. And this is not only about the sacrament of ordination, but also about appointing women to positions of responsibility in church policies, both locally and internationally. But the film goes much further. The same Barbie who thinks she's realized feminist ideals is called a fascist by teenage girls in the film. Instead of freedom, Barbie represents for them the suffocating yoke of a beauty ideal and of expectations that virtually no one can meet. Moreover, as it turns out, Barbieland is not much better than the still too male-dominated real world. The role of men in the pink Mattel environment is downright pathetic. Matriarchy turns out to be as bad as patriarchy. It reminded me of the famous quote by Germaine Greer, author and feminist. She says, "The opposite of patriarchy is not matriarchy, but fraternity." It would be interesting to explore the evangelical roots of this statement, but then we would lose sight of Barbie because brotherhood and sisterhood, to my mind, receive little attention in the film. Rather, I feel it's about freedom. A pivotal moment in the film is Gloria's monologue about the impossible standards that come with being a woman. Among other things, she says, "It is literally impossible to be a woman. You have to be thin, but not too thin. And you can never say you want to be thin. You have to say you want to be healthy, but also you have to be thin. You have to have money, but you can't ask for money because that's crass. You have to be a boss, but you can't be mean. You have to lead, but you can't squash other people's ideas. You're supposed to love being a mother, but don't talk about your kids all the damn time. You have to be a career woman, but also always be looking out for other people." These paradoxical requirements put women in an impossible position. End quote. Her conclusion is, "I'm just so tired of watching myself and every single other woman tie herself into knots so that people will like us." In an interview, Greta Gerwich makes it clear that this monologue, which she wrote herself, is not about feminist challenges. She indicates that men face similar problems. She says, the men have their own speech they feel they can't ever give, and they have their twin tightrope, which is also painful. People stuck with expectations they can't meet. That's what this film is about. And this is a theme that plays an important role in the Christian faith as well. What Gloria in her monologue calls knots, and what Greta Gerwich in the interview calls the tightrope, That is called in one of Paul's letters the yoke of slavery. It was one of my colleagues who, after watching Barbie, drew my attention to a verse from the 5th chapter of the so-called Galatians letter. There it says, "For this freedom Christ has set us free. So stand firm and don't let the yoke of slavery be imposed on you again." What is Paul talking about? He sees people asking themselves the question, am I good enough? And to answer that question, they compare their actions to the expectations they read in the commandments and prohibitions of the Old Testament. And what do they discover? That they fail to live up to them. That the expectations are always higher than human performance can live up to. Beware, in some fields, this is a healthy attitude. You don't give a driving license to someone who can't drive. You have to prove you can do it first. You don't give an engineering degree to someone who hasn't shown the necessary competences. Thank goodness, because otherwise no one would dare to cross a bridge. But in the most important area of all, well-being should not depend on your performance. The area, that is, of love. Imagine if parents' love depended on their child's performance. No, first there is the love that says, I love you as you are. The film depicted amusingly in Ken's hideously ugly jumper, I am enough. In all my conversations I have with people as a pastor, that is what comes up as the most important condition for being happy, to know that you are loved for who you really are. Paul experiences that unconditional love in his relationship with Christ, and through it he discovers the formidable freedom to which he constantly testifies. In our achievement-oriented society, however, there are countless people who succumb to the sky-high expectations they feel weighing on their shoulders. Youngsters at school, partners in a relationship, colleagues in the workplace, you name it. Sometimes it is others who impose the yoke. Sometimes we do it to ourselves. Either way, we experience too little unconditional love in our society that gives the confidence to say, I am enough. Of course, we should also avoid the other extreme, a complacency that avoids any challenge, growth or improvement. Paul writes in the same chapter of the Galatians letter, brothers, you were called to freedom, only do not misuse freedom as a pretext for selfishness. On the contrary, serve one another through love. Freedom includes an invitation to continually venture out to one another. This is always challenging. You can be hurt. You yourself can hurt others. That is intrinsic to human existence. At first sight, it would appear that life in Barbieland is more pleasant. Every day is the most beautiful and the happiest. And yet, stereotypical Barbie chooses the human way. Interestingly, to do so, she has a conversation with her creator, Ruth. When Barbie asks her permission to become human, Ruth replies that she doesn't need permission to do so. But you are my creator, Barbie responds. Don't you control me? Ruth replies, I cannot control you any more than I could control my own daughter. I named you after her, Barbara. I always hoped for you like I hoped for her. This kind of conversation between creator and creation has strong biblical roots. In a sense, every page of the Bible is devoted to it. The quest for man's proper place in creation. The observation also that it would be easier if the creator had everything under control, but that it doesn't work like that. Man is free and therefore responsible. The creator can only hope. I always hoped for you like I hoped for her. A crucial text from the Old Testament evokes this image of a God who hopes that man will go to the right ways. On behalf of God, Moses says, "Life and death I hold out to you, blessing and curse. Please choose life." Choose life. In this emotional exclamation, you can hear the powerlessness resonating. Parents who watch their children grow up know exactly how this feels. Ideally, you want to protect your children from everything that can hurt in life, but you can only achieve that by putting them in a sterile environment, a kind of Barbieland. No, you know you have to let go, and you can only hope. In exactly the same way, God looks at humanity, the Bible says. "What was I made for?" Billie Eilish sings, meanwhile, in the film. "Where is my calling?" is the Christian translation. To Barbie's credit, millions of people worldwide have felt this question sink in. And they've been reminded that in some way or another, the answer has something to do with equality, freedom, and fraternity. And ultimately, with unconditional love. That's good news. That is gospel.